Hey everybody, Nick here from Twisted Wrister Hockey, and for this video, I wanted to give you my NHL Power Rankings Thanksgiving edition. So one reason why I decided to do a Power Rankings at this particular point is because dating all the way back to the 05-06 season, NHL teams in a playoff position by Thanksgiving have a 76.3% chance of making the postseason. So we're going to do power rankings here. Of course, I want to know your thoughts in the comments down below. Who do I have too high? Who do I have too low? What do yours look like? Let me know, of course, how I've ranked the Panthers as well. So we're going to start at the very bottom and work our way to the top. And starting things off at number 32, I have the Anaheim Ducks. I think they just got their first regulation win of the season. They had the worst goal differential in the league at -31. And that win they got in regulation heading into Thanksgiving came against the Rangers on a back-to-back night where the Rangers had to claw back from 2-0 down against the Kings. Only Zegras and Troy Terry have over 12 points. So some of the vets out there, Silfverberg, Vetrano, Strome, those guys have combined for just 12 goals and 9 assists in 20 games. So they still need some more productivity. Mason McTavish is doing just fine in his first rookie season. But yeah, they're definitely going to be in the run for a lottery pick. 31st, Ottawa Senators, 28th in goals against average. You can't be that bad at keeping the puck out of the net. Really a disappointing team. I had the Senators making the playoffs this year. Certainly Josh Norris's absence has meant a lot to this team. Since he's been put on injured reserve, the team is 2-10-1 in that span. Shane Pinto's done a good job filling in. He wasn't necessarily expected to be in that sort of role, but that has exposed the lack of the team's depth at forward, even though they have lots of good guys in that top six. 30th, Chicago Blackhawks. They've lost 5 straight. They started the season 4-2, but since then they have gone 2-8-3, giving up 51 goals in those 13 games. Although Arvid Soderblom has played fairly well in net, .910 save percentage, and Patrick Kane, he just isn't playing with that, elite level talent around him like you would have with somebody like Alex DeBrincat. This season, just 3 goals and 12 assists. Certainly not bad, but his line mates are Athanasiou and Max Domi, so not the strongest performance for the Hawks. 29th, it's actually my team, the San Jose Sharks. NHL worst 2-7-3 as the Shark Tank is a shell of its former self, I have to say. They are strangely the third best team in the NHL at special teams, over 21% on the power play, and by far the best on the PK at 91.4%. That is absurd. But yeah, this team has looked like absolute trash defensively at even strength. Their last 4 games have been really bad as well. I've been watching them quite a bit. Even Erik Karlsson, despite having a 30-point season, his plus-minus rating is only 0. So not looking so great for Team Teal, but I'm kind of enjoying that because then that way we have a shot at getting a really good draft pick. All right, 28th, Columbus. They've been playing a lot better recently. They started the season 3-9, but since then they are 4-2-1, and that's ever since they came back from those games in Finland. They lost both of those games to Colorado. They only have 3 players with at least 10 points so far. That's not good. They have a litany of injuries that is not helping them either. And also defensively, they're still not making enough improvement. They've conceded 26 goals in the last 7 games, so that's getting a little bit close to 4 goals per game. Okay, 27th, I've got the Canucks, another team that has disappointed greatly. I would say that the 2 most disappointing teams, in my opinion, are the Canucks and also the Senators. So I had Vancouver making the playoffs this year. They are 7th in goals for. They are 5th best on the man advantage, but defensively, yikes. They are worst in the NHL at penalty kill, 65.7%. They were toward the very bottom last year as well, and they're taking the 6th most penalties in the NHL, so that doesn't make things any easier. And man, if we're talking about an individual disappointment, that's your Demko. He's got to be in that conversation. An .883 save percentage and a 3.87 goals against average. 26th, another disappointment, but that has to do with a lot of the injuries they faced. That's the Capitals. They've lost 4 straight, once in a shootout, up until their most recent game, and they've conceded 31 goals in their last 7 games. Now, part of that is because Dmitry Orlov, maybe their best defender the past several seasons, he's been injured for quite some time. Lots of other injuries still for this team. Tom Wilson, Nicholas Backstrom, of course, and Connor Brown. TJ Oshie just got back into the lineup and looks good. And offensively, they are certainly paying the price. They are just 26th in goals for. In 25th, this is another team in the Metro who has struggled, the Flyers. They are 0-5-3 in their last 8 games, and they're also banged up. Look at this, like Trevor Van Riemsdyk, Travis Konechny, Sean Couturier, Cam Atkinson, Scott Lawton, even more are currently on the shelf for the Flyers. Carter Hart, he's still playing pretty well. He got off to an absolutely electric start, but 2.68 goals against average and a .920 save percentage on the season. That's still very good, but like I said, his last 6 starts, not particularly good. Kevin Hayes, he has kind of earned his contract a little bit better this season. Owen Tippett has done very well as called upon to serve a more important role in this forward core. He has 6 goals and 4 assists in 15 games. So good to see him actually flourishing a little bit after moving on from the Panthers. In 24th, I have the Arizona Coyotes. At one point this year, they were 6-6-1. Then they lost 4 in a row, but then they shut out the Hurricanes 4-0. That's incredibly impressive, especially on the road. They are 6-7-1 on the road this year. That's honestly not bad. And they have 6 more games on their 14-game road trip right now. So anyway, this team has been a lot more competitive than we expected. Like Karel Vejmelka is in the top 10 in goals saved above expected or expected goals against or something like that. They're 5th worst in goals for. However, on the power play, they're actually ranked 8th. So they're just struggling to put goals on the board at even strength. Clayton Keller he's the only guy with more than 12 points on this team. He has 19. But eventually, once they get Nick Schmaltz, acclimated again, he was injured to start the year, I believe. Then who knows? Maybe they could actually be a spoiler in that division. In 23rd, I have the Buffalo Sabres. Kind of a weird year for Buffalo. They got off to such a hot start. However, the last 2 games, they have scored 13 goals. So that came after an 8-game losing streak. All of those coming in regulation. So I don't know exactly how to gauge Buffalo, but those 8 losses in a row certainly did move them down this rankings. Their next 4 games, it's not going to get any easier. They're playing the Devils, the Lightning, the Red Wings, and the Avalanche. Craig Anderson has had a really good season once again for the Sabres after a pretty strong season last year, but Eric Comrie has been a disappointment after a really strong season in Winnipeg. So far, 3.62 goals against average and an .887 save percentage in 11 games. In 22nd, this should come as a disappointment to a lot of people, but it kind of makes sense a little bit, right? The Edmonton Oilers. So one reason why they're struggling is because Jack Campbell has been a complete bust since arriving in Edmonton. He has an .876 save percentage, a 4.15 goals against average in 11 games. Stuart Skinner's playing very well, though, so that's good to see. But the Oilers are 29th in goals against average. And yes, they certainly do miss Evander Kane. They've only scored 13 goals in their last 6 games, and their 5-on-5 offense is particularly having a hard time out there. So McDavid and Draisaitl, they can't do it by themselves. Maybe eventually they find the right chemistry in the line combinations while Kane is out. But even so, we know how much of an impact Kane had when he arrived to the team last year. In 21st, this is actually a pleasant surprise. It's the Montreal Canadiens. They're, above 500 in terms of record. They've strangely been pretty consistent this year, too. They have 1 3-game winning streak and 1 3-game losing streak, and that includes overtime points. The defense has not been very good recently, especially for Jake Allen. So in Allen's last 8 games, he's conceded 34 goals, so over 4 per game. .876 save percentage. His last 4 games have been even worse. However, they have gotten some good scoring, not just from Caulfield and Suzuki, but also from a couple of guys who came in during the offseason. So Kirby Dach, 4 goals, 13 assists. That's almost as much as he had in all of last year with Chicago. And Sean Monahan has been a good fit as well, contributing 5 goals and 7 assists after being basically expendable in Calgary. In 20th, I have the Minnesota Wild. So clearly they've missed Kevin Fiala. They are tied for 23rd in goals for when they were a top 5 offense last year. Only Kirill Kaprizov and Matt Boldy have at least 5 goals at even strength. Now, one other factor here is that they've been missing Ryan Hartman for most of the season. He had 33 even strength goals this past year. In 19th, I have the LA Kings. They are just 1-3-1 in their last 5 games. 23rd in goals against, with neither Jonathan Quick nor Cal Peterson stepping up. So Quick was actually kind of a difference maker for them last year, but it hasn't been the case so far. However, offensively, they've been a decent team. Gabe Vilardi is a huge piece of that equation. 11 goals for a guy who almost looked like he had kind of run out of chances to stay on an NHL roster. And Arthur Kaliev is also kind of having a breakout season. 6 goals and 7 assists, and he leads the team with 4 goals on the power play. Fiala is leading the team in overall scoring, so that's great to see. Although Adrian Kempe, just 1 goal in the past 12 games. In 18th, I have the Florida Panthers. So They had a really nice bounce back against the Boston Bruins, winning 5-2 after conceding 16 goals in their previous 3 games. So, of course, one of the big sort of topics to cover with the Florida Panthers down the stretch is whether or not they will stick with Spencer Knight or if they're going to try to get Bobrovsky in a rhythm. Bob, just an .888 save percentage and a 3.62 goals against average after a really nice season last year. Knight, .922 save, 2.39 goals against average. Now, the Panthers are 10th in the NHL in goals for. Matthew Tkachuk, of course, having a tremendous season so far for the Cats in his first year. They have scored also 7 power play goals in their last 5 games. So that is a nice piece of the equation that they're figuring out right now. And Sam Reinhart has 4 of those goals. So he was a point per game player last year. Let's see if he can keep at it. In 17th, I have the Nashville Predators. They won only 1 game in October in North America. Of course, they won 2 games against the Sharks in Prague. I was there. So ever since then, they are 6-3-1. No surprise, after a cold start, Roman Josi has 3 goals and 7 assists in those 10 games. Now, on one hand, they have struggled in terms of getting secondary scoring. I thought that guys like Eeli Tolvanen, Jakov Trenin, and especially Tanner Jeannot were going to build on their successes last year, but they have been almost a non-factor. However, the team has gotten what they've really needed out of somebody I didn't expect, and that is Kevin Lankinen. As Jussi Saros has had kind of a bad season, Lankinen, on the other hand, even though he's only played 6 games, he has a .922 save percentage and a 2.50 goals against average. And I thought that he was probably the weakest link on this whole roster. In 16th, I've got the Flames. They are 4-1-1 in their last 6, so they're able to kind of tread water in the playoff picture despite kind of a bad start to the season for Jonathan Huberdeau. He has not found his groove in Calgary whatsoever. 3 goals and 6 assists in 16 games. Mackenzie Weegar, he has just 5 assists, although I do have to credit him for his advanced stats, at least when it comes to on-ice save percentage. Flames goaltenders have a .920 save percentage at even strength with Weegar on the ice. However, despite that, Jacob Markstrom is not having a good year whatsoever. He was, of course, a Vezina finalist this past season. An .889 save percentage, a 3.03 goals against average. That is definitely not going to cut it, even though Vladar has done a pretty good job as a backup. And overall, they're 18th in goals against average at 3.21 for a team that was in the top 5 this past year. In 15th, this comes as a little bit of a surprise to me. I've got the Hurricanes. So I make this when they just lost a couple of hours ago to the Boston Bruins of all teams. So they've actually lost 5 in a row, but 4 of those have come in overtime or shootout. But even so, they're just 27th in goals for. They're 30th on the power play. They are struggling a ton. One huge reason is because they've been missing Teuvo Teravainen recently. And I look at a couple of players who I expected to build on their successes last year or have kind of breakout seasons. Seth Jarvis, only 3 goals and 4 assists after coming on very strongly, not only in the second half of last year, but also in the postseason. And this one, this is really what you can point to. Jesperi Kotkaniemi, just a goal and 2 assists. So when somebody like Kotkaniemi is struggling in particular, you really look at the loss of Vincent Trocheck, somebody who was excellent in the postseason and was a terrific second-line center for them. In 14th, I have the Rangers. They are 4-2-1 in their past 7 games. They've only given up 15 goals, and they've had a couple of offensive outbursts in that stretch. Now, Igor Shesterkin, he hasn't been amazing this year. He's not a front runner to win the Vezina at this exact moment, but he has turned it up a bit as of late. .936 save percentage and 8 goals conceded in his last 4 games. So pretty good for Shesty. Now, offensively, the Rangers have struggled a little bit at the forward position. The top line's been doing pretty well, but like Lafreniere and Kakko, they've combined for 17 points. I know that they're not supposed to set the table necessarily, but you would hope that, of course, with where they were selected in the draft and some of their play in the postseason, they would be able to kind of build on top of that. Adam Fox, however, he has been adding quite a lot of offense, 6 goals and 17 assists. He should be part of that Norris Trophy conversation. In 13th, I had the St. Louis Blues. Now, they have had kind of a weird start to the year. They won their first 3 games. They lost 8 in a row, I think all in regulation. Then they won 7 in a row, and they just got crushed by Buffalo before Thanksgiving. So in those 7 straight wins, they only gave up 16 goals. So Binnington might be turning a corner there. However, you have to be a little bit concerned because a couple of those guys who had over 20 goals last year, they had 9 of them, right? And 8 of them returned to this year's lineup. All right, so for example, Ryan O'Reilly and Ivan Barbashev, they have just 8 goals and 9 assists combined. Brandon Saad, even though he's been injured a little bit, he has just 3 goals, 0 assists in 12 games. So I still think the Blues will find a way to put it together. I believe in Craig Berube in that respect. But yeah, some pretty surprising results so far, or at least inconsistent. In 12th, I have the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, they've also gotten off to kind of a bad start, but they've been turning a corner as of late. They are 6-1-1 in their past 8 games. They've won 4 straight. It's kind of weird because the Penguins, they've been really healthy to start this season, whereas the previous 3 seasons, they were decimated by injuries probably more than any other NHL team, and they were, overachieving quite a bit. Anyway, Sidney Crosby so far, he's got 27 points. He's having a monster year. Evgeny Malkin is a point-per-game player. Ricard Raquel looks pretty good ever since he arrived in Pittsburgh. 8 goals and 5 assists for him. Jason Zucker, if this guy can dial in like he is right now, this team can be very threatening at both ends of the ice. Zucker, in 18 games, has 5 goals and 10 assists. However, they've struggled a little bit defensively. Remember, in the offseason, they lost Mike Matheson, and they also lost John Marino, who's fitting in really well in New Jersey. So I think they were 5th in goals against last year. That is down to being tied for 13th right now. The penalty kill has not been that good either. I think they were 3rd last season. So anyway, Pittsburgh has a little bit of work to do in respects to defense, but offensively, they're actually getting a fairly good output from guys who are getting paid the big bucks. In 11th, I have the Tampa Bay Lightning. They recently had a 4-game winning streak snapped, but that was at the hands of the Bruins. Maybe their defense is missing Ryan McDonough. And you also have to remember that Anthony Cirelli has been out for the whole year, maybe the best defensive forward in the NHL. I think part of this has to be also attributed to Derek Lalonde now coaching another team we'll talk about very shortly. So Andrei Vasilevsky, a 3.0 goals against average, a .903 save percentage, and no shutouts. So Vasi has really dipped quite a lot this season. Offensively, fortunately, they are holding their own. Of course, you've got Nikita Kucherov doing his thing. You've got Steven Stamkos doing his thing. Not to mention guys who were acquired at the trade deadline last year, like Nick Paul and Brandon Hagel. They've been holding their own offensively as well. So really, if anything, it's the defense that has been a surprise so far. Now, speaking of Derek Lalonde, I've got his team, the Red Wings, in 10th. Maybe he gets in that Jack Adams conversation, as the Red Wings are securely in a playoff spot right now, at least by points percentage. They are by quite a bit. And that would be the first time in 7 years that they made the playoffs. They've been a little bit streaky. They won 3, then they lost 4 with a couple overtime points. And then they won 3, and they scored 16 goals in those 3 games. Now, those moves that Steve Yzerman has made in the offseason have been paying off. So Dominic Kubalik, 9 goals and 12 assists. He could easily smash the 30-plus goals he scored his rookie season. David Perron, 6 goals and 10 assists. He's looking great as well. Defensively, they have made quite a bit of improvement under Lalonde. They're now 13th in the NHL in goals against average. Ville Husso already has 3 shutouts. Maybe he could be in the Vezina Trophy conversation. However, his career high for starts is 40, or games played. He might need to start 60-plus games because Alex Nedeljkovic has been crap so far. 4.33 goals against average and an .873 save percentage. So if they can find a way to get better backup goaltending, then this team could, who knows, they could even be a lock for the top 3 in that division. I know you didn't want to hear that. In 9th, I can't believe this, guys. The Seattle Kraken, I might even be doing them a disservice because they are 5th in the NHL in points percentage as I make this video. And offensively, everybody, it's been just an absolute fiesta for the Kraken because everybody's filling the net. Burakovsky, Matty Beniers, he's got to be in that Calder conversation. 6 goals, 8 assists. Jordan Eberle's having a good season. They're a team that isn't heavy with one line. They've got 3 lines that can put the puck in the net. And they've been doing this with Martin Jones as their goaltender. Martin Jones. So the Kraken in their last game beat the San Jose Sharks in an absolute track meet. It ended up being 7-5, but it was really 8-5 empty net goal. Before that, Jones in his previous 8 starts had at least a .900 save percentage. That's really good for any goaltender, and that's especially great for Martin Jones, who was statistically maybe the worst goaltender in the league over the past 4 seasons. So on the season, a 2.49 goals against average and a .906 save percentage. If he can keep that up and somehow Philip Grubauer can get back to being Philip Grubauer, who knows? This team could be a lock in the Pacific Division. They are very securely in 2nd place right now. In 8th, I have the Winnipeg Jets and Rick Bowness. After taking the Stars to the Stanley Cup Final in 2020, It's almost like he's carried over that exact same approach, because when you look at defense for the Jets, it is absolutely flourishing right now. Connor Hellebuyck could be a Vezina Trophy finalist, a 928 save percentage, a 2.35 goals against average, and 2 shutouts. Of course, he's going to play, 65 plus games. Josh Morrissey actually leads the team in scoring with 3 goals and 16 assists. He had an overtime winner against Carolina recently. Pierre-Luc Dubois. You want to talk about shaking things up in the locker room? Something is working here, because Dubois has been responding very well. Of course, he's on a 1-year deal, 8 goals and 8 assists in 18 games. And they haven't even gotten Kyle Connor going. He has just 6 games. They're playing, or 6 goals, I should say. And they're doing this without Nikolai Ehlers right now. So if for some reason Ehlers can return maybe around the All-Star break, let's just say, and they get Kyle Connor going, this team could be absolutely deadly. So far, Bonus is doing a tremendous job. Speaking of tremendous coaching jobs, let's also talk about Lane Lambert. I've got the Islanders in 7th, maybe the best team that nobody's talking about right now. Right now, Ilya Sorokin certainly making a bid for the Vezina Trophy. 934 save percentage, 2.20 goals against average, and 2 shutouts. Offensively, they're getting contributions right where they need them. Barzell's having a great year. Anders Lee, 8 goals and 11 assists. And of course, Brock Nelson is filling the net as well. Oliver Wahlstrom has been a pleasant surprise. 5 goals and 6 assists so far, despite only averaging 12 minutes of time on ice per game. And this team has been very consistent in that they're not winning too many games in a row. They're not losing too many games in a row, especially that last part there. In 6th, I've got the Maple Leafs. Now, despite missing the likes of Muzzin, Riley, and Brody on defense, they're finding a way to get things done. They're tied for 6th in goals against average with the Islanders. So Ilya Samsonov and Matt Murray, especially since he's returned from injury, they have been a breath of fresh air for the Leafs goaltending. I am pleasantly stunned to see their performances so far. Now, the big 4 players, right? Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares, they've been at least over a point per game over the past 9 or 10 games. If they can get a little bit more from the likes of guys like Michael Bunting, right? 4 goals and 6 assists, or Alex Kerfoot, a goal and 6 assists, Kalle Jarnkrok, 4 goals, 2 assists. If they can get a little bit better secondary scoring, this team could be absolutely lethal. But there's nothing about the Leafs right now that concerns me in terms of finishing outside of the top 3 in that division. In 5th, and really not a surprise to me, it's the Dallas Stars. It's the Peter DeBoer effect, right? Panthers fans, right? So DeBoer, in his first season with the team, does tremendous work. DeBoer did really well when he got to Florida. He did really well when he got to Columbus. He did really well when he got to San Jose with Vegas. And now he's doing a banger job with the Dallas Stars. Jake Ottinger, he's proving that last year was not a fluke. 924 save percentage, 2.32 goals against average. Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn have been a revelation for this team. 13 goals and 25 assists for those 2 players combined. Just tremendous when you get that secondary scoring outside of that dynamite top line. Mason Marchment has been a good fit as well. 7 goals and 6 assists. Jason Robertson has 16 goals. What if this guy wins the Rocket Richard Trophy? Yes, his contract looks like an absolute steal for Dallas. Even though these guys are behind Dallas in points percentage, they've got things rolling, and they're going to be scary good once again, and that's the Avalanche. So they're finding ways to win despite all their injuries. Rantanen and McKinnon have been leading the way. They look terrific. Cale Makar, he's on fire since his slow start. And oh my goodness, if we're going to talk about anything with the Avalanche, Alexander Georgiev, I thought this guy was dead to rights since being traded over. I never understood people's fascination with him, despite maybe a good rookie year. But in his last 9 games, his lowest save percentage is .907. It is .938 overall during those 9 games. And the Avalanche are, as a result, 4th best in the NHL in goals against average. So right now, it's not looking like they miss Nazem Kadri one bit. In 3rd, I've got the Vegas Golden Knights. Bruce Cassidy, of course, should be considered for Coach of the Year. They started 13-2, and they've cooled off since then. They got a couple of victories before the Thanksgiving break. But yeah, it's really hard not to imagine them at least finishing top 3 in that division. If not, they might have it wrapped up already. I mean, their next biggest competition so far is the Kraken. Plus 25 goal differential, that is the best in the Western Conference. 3rd best goals against average right now, with Logan Thompson building on his successes last year. A .925 save percentage, a 2.30 goals against average, 2 shutouts. And his counterpart is Aiden Hill, who was looking like a wash-up when he arrived with the Sharks. last season, but he's actually been pretty good for Vegas so far. Look at these two guys, Jack Eichel and Alex Pietrangelo, making huge impact for this team offensively. Eichel, 11 goals and 15 assists in 21 games. Alex Pietrangelo finding that fountain of youth, 3 goals and 18 assists. So this team is looking like an absolute wagon in that division. In second, I've got the New Jersey Devils. And yes, sorry Lindy is definitely what is being chanted around the Rock these days. So they won 13 straight games, of course. Really should have had that 14th game against Toronto. There were 3 disallowed goals. I understand why at least a couple of them were brought back. But even so, the Devils were dominant for most of that game. Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, and Jesper Bratt, they are fantastic. They are over a point per game. And it's not just them putting the puck in the net. It's the ways that they create offense, extend the plays, right? And forecheck the hell out of their opponents. Kind of like the Avalanche for an Eastern Conference team, if I were to make the comparisons there. Yeah, just very strong in transition as well. Vitek Vanacek, we can't underscore his achievements so far in net. A .917 save percentage and a 2.14 goals against average. And that defense has been great. I really like the acquisition of John Marino. Jonas Siegenthaler, one of the best kept secrets on defense in the NHL. They are surrendering under 25 shots per game, and as a result, second best goals against average in the NHL. I am absolutely stunned by this team. They're leading their division by a country mile if you look at points percentage. Not sure if they're going to hold on to it, but they are so fun to watch. I can't see them not making the postseason. But then again, they've basically been out of the playoff picture for the past decade, so we'll see. And in first, no surprise here, the Boston Bruins, even though they lost to the Panthers. Jim Montgomery, what a redemption story. A guy who had to resign from his position with the Stars when he was having some problems with substance abuse. And Boston right now, is there anything that can go wrong for them? It doesn't look like it. And they were a team that was decimated, absolutely decimated by injuries to start the season. McAvoy was out. Marchand was out for a while. They started the season without Taylor Hall, or it looked like it was going to be that way. Grzelcyk was out. And guys, they are 12-0 at home right now. They are best in the NHL in goals for. They're best in goals against average. They have the 3rd best power play, clicking at over 30%, which is ridiculous. And they're the 2nd best in penalty kill at 85.7% going into their what became a victory today against the Carolina Hurricanes. Hampus Lindholm, especially when a couple defensemen were missing this season, he has been tremendous. 4 goals and 14 assists. And Linus Ullmark has been outstanding for them. Of course, the defense in front of him is to be credited as well. But imagine if he can tend the net the way he has. And then imagine, I should say, once Jeremy Swayman can kind of find his groove here, he was great for them this past season. There is no reason why the Boston Bruins shouldn't be at the top of these rankings. They've been absurd. And I'm really kicking myself for saying they'd miss the playoffs. Anyway, guys, what do your power rankings look like? Make sure you comment down below. Let me know. And let me know if you want me to produce videos like this for Flying Fluffy Hockey. If you have any other ideas, please do shout those out. And of course, you can always find me on my main channel, and that is Twisted Wrister Hockey. We'll have links to that in the description down below. Make sure you guys hit the thumbs up for Jaws and company, and stick around for more great content on this channel. I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in. Once again, I'm Nick, and I'll catch you later. Ciao.